added a little bit to these notes because she had all these listed. This was Miss Boykins from summer school, actually. She used this. I added the domain because we've been talking about that. But what's nice about the domain is for every single one of these, what's the domain?
The R thingy.
The fancy R, all real numbers. So if I was taking a test or a quiz, I could literally go through and go, all right, I at least have 4 points. There we go. I know nothing else, but at least I have 4 points, right? That's step one, okay? That should be an easy set of points that you'd be able to get. All right? Now, what does A say? The zeros. What the heck are zeros?
Oh, those are the X-intercept. Yeah.
Zeros is another name for X-intercepts. I can't spell and talk at the same. Intercepts. Zeros is another name for X-intercepts. They are also called roots, and they are also called solutions. Don't ask me why there are so many names for them, but I just want to familiarize you with them, that those are all asking for the same thing. Okay? It's all asking for the X-intercepts that we were doing yesterday. So if I look at number 1, is number 1 in intercept form? It's factored, right? So yes, it's in intercept form. I have one of my X-intercepts from there. What would my X-intercept be there? 0, 0. I have another one from here. What do I get here? I get X equals -5. So my other X-intercept is -5, 0. Questions about that? So when it says zeros, it's asking for the X-intercepts. Yeah? Okay. So I'm going to do this guy with you. Oh, shoot. Sorry. My brain just thought of something I forgot to do. Okay. For my other class. All right. So I'm going to need to draw on my axis of symmetry. I'm going to need to find my vertex. This is new. Do you see that? My Y-intercept. So I'm going to look for that when I graph it and see if I can find it. Okay? And then my range, we know how to find that, and our maximum, minimum, we know how to find that. So the only thing that's new there is the X or the Y-intercept. So I'm going to make my XY chart. And let's see, I'm going to start off by plotting my zeros. I have 0, 0, and I have -5, 0. So I need to find what in order to start my XY chart? And how do I find that? It's halfway between those two. Now, halfway between these two is not a nice place, is it? Or is it? It's not nice, is it? If I can't easily see what's exactly halfway through, here's what I do. I take 0 and I take -5 and I add them together and then I divide by 2. In other words, you're finding the average of your X-intercepts. So 0 plus -5 is -5. Divided by 2, if you go to your calculator, that'll give you -2.5. That's where my vertex is going to be. It's at -2.5. That's what's exactly halfway between 0 and -5. Does that make sense? All right. So I know my vertex is -2.5, comma something. I'm going to put my -2.5 here. And I don't need the rest of my XY chart to be decimals. So what are the two nice numbers on either side of -2.5? -2 and -3. Right? Because -2, -3, and halfway between there is -2.5. You follow? So now I should be able to go out one more and get one more number. And the only reason I'm doing that is why? Because I don't want to put in decimal after decimal after decimal after decimal. That's going to be a pain. Okay? Now, will I get a mirror image on the Y side?
No.
Yes.
Always.
Not always.
That's why I said that.
The reason why it's a yes here is because even though I have a decimal, it's a 0.5, which means it is exactly the same distance from -3 as it is from -2. If it's any other decimal than a 0.5, you will not get a mirror image. Okay? Now, if that's going to confuse you and that's one extra thing that you don't want to have to remember, then here's how you get around that. Every time you have a decimal, plug in every number so that you don't have to worry about if it's a mirror image or not, and you will see that it's a mirror image or that it's not one. So, I'm going to plug in -4. So, -4 parentheses, -4 plus 5. And I get -4. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to change those -4s to -3s. Yeah? And I get -6. Now I'm going to jump to -2 simply because -2.5 has more digits and I'm going to have to retype stuff there. So I'm just going to jump to -2 next. And I get -6. Looks like I have a mirror image, don't I? Whoop. See, messed myself up there. All right, -1 and -1. I get -4. So there is a mirror image. Now I'm going to plug in the -2.5 because that one takes a little more thought. -2.5 parentheses, -2.5 plus 5. And I get -6.25. Okay, we ready to graph? So, do you notice that my zeros or my x-intercepts did not appear on here? Why not? Because they would be the next ones out, wouldn't they?
Oh, so we don't have to erase it?
No, you don't have to erase it. Just know that if your zeros are further out than this, then they're not going to appear on your XY chart. Okay. And that's fine. There's still points on the graph. So -4, -4, -3, -6, -2.5. Be careful, that's between -2 and -3. And -6.25. -2, -6, and -1, -4. And because I had those intercepts graphed, I actually have 7 points to connect instead of just 5. So? Can I draw in my axis of symmetry?
Yes.
It's going to go where? Exactly halfway between that -2 and -3. So what's the equation of my axis of symmetry?
X equals -6.25.
Careful. X equals -2.5.
Oh, because it's the X.
What's my vertex? -2.5, comma? -6.25. What is my Y-intercept?
0.
My Y-intercept, it looks like, where is it crossing here? It looks like it's at 0, 0, isn't it?
I knew it.
So just like your X-intercept is a point, your Y-intercept is also a point.
On the Y.
It's wherever it crosses the Y-axis. So here's my Y-axis. That's where it's crossing it, and that's the point 0, 0. What is my range? Y is what?
Is greater than or less than?
Greater than or equal to -6.25. Do I have a maximum or a minimum? Which is actually reversed of how I usually write it, but that's okay. And what is that minimum value? -6.25. Okay. Is this helpful for you for me to continue to go through these step by step just to make sure that it's becoming second nature to you? Okay. All right. Let's look at number 2. Is this in intercept form? Yes or no? No, it is not in intercept form. What form is it in? Standard form. So how do I put it in intercept form? Snowflake. Negative 7 and 6, two numbers that multiply to get negative 7 and add to get 6, I think are 7 and negative 1, yes? I put x and x, so I have x plus 7 and x minus 1. So I have negative 7 from here and positive 1 from there. You follow? So what are my zeros? Negative 7, 0, and 1, 0. So let's plot those. Negative 7, 0, and 1, 0. Whew! I have a feeling this is going to be a big number. What's exactly halfway between there? I can count. Looks like negative 3. If I can't count or I'm unsure with my counting abilities because it's really small printing or whatever, I can always do what I did up here. You would take negative 7, you would add 1, and then you would divide it by 2. Negative 7 plus 1 is negative 6. Divided by 2 is negative 3. That's your halfway point. Okay? So, that means on my XY chart, negative 3 is what goes in the middle. My vertex is negative 3 comma something. How do I fill in the rest of my XY chart? How do I fill in the rest? Put in values around, right? Now, here's my question. Where do I plug in? Do I plug into standard form or into the factored form? Either one, you're going to get the same answer both places. I find it easier to plug it into intercept form, actually. So let's see. Negative 5 plus 7, and then negative 5 minus 1 gives me negative 12. Am I going to have a mirror image? Yes, because everything's spaced out evenly. If I'm unsure, then just plug all 5 numbers in, right? Now I'm going to change those negative 5s to negative 4s. And I get negative 15. Going to have a mirror image. Now I change those negative 4s to negative 3s. And I get negative 16. So this is a parabola that has moved down quite a bit, hasn't it? So let's see. Negative 5, negative 12. It is counting by 2s, so that's kind of helpful. Yeah? Where's negative 4, negative 15? Where's negative 15 going to be? Between what?
Negative 14 and negative 16.
Negative 14 and negative 16. It's going to be halfway between there. And then I have negative 3, negative 16, negative 2, negative 15 again, and negative 1, negative 12. Now, I can draw my graph in here, but there's something that's going to be difficult to find over here if I don't add one more value to this. Do you know what it is? The Y-intercept. Because do you notice I don't have any points on the Y-intercept? Because my zeros are not just the next numbers out, they're 2 numbers out. I don't have anything. So I can draw this in, and I'm thinking, okay, it looks like it's about either 6, 7, or 8, but I don't know for sure. How can I find out for sure? On your XY chart, your Y-intercept happens when x is 0. Right? Because it's 0 left to right, and then it's some up or down. So let's just plug in 0 really quick. And I'll get that Y-intercept. Hang on. 0 plus 7, 0 minus 1, and I get negative 7. Does that seem reasonable according to my graph?
Yes.
So my Y-intercept is the point 0, comma, negative 7. How does your Y-intercept look different than a 0? How does your Y-intercept look different than a 0? The zeros have the 0 where? On the Y value. Your Y-intercept has the 0 on the X value. Okay? All right. Let's see. I got to draw in an axis of symmetry here. And what is the equation of my axis of symmetry? X equals negative 3. My vertex is negative 3, comma, negative 16. I've got my y-intercept. What's my range? Greater than or equal to negative 16. Do I have a maximum or a minimum? And what is that minimum value? Not too bad? Are we going in a good direction? Okay. Do you want me to keep going? Because I got more on the back. And I can't see that one on the back. Number 4. Look at my number 4.
Everyone's number 4 is like that.
It's what? Y equals parentheses x minus 2. Thank you. Okay, so here's what I think I'm going to do. I am going to pass out the homework for those of you that want to start on the homework. For those of you that want to make sure you're doing it correctly, I'm going to have you work on numbers 3 and 4. I am also going to work on numbers 3 and 4, and in a few minutes I will post numbers 3 and 4 up on the board so you can check to see if you're doing it right. Does that make sense? But for those of you that have it, you can start working on the homework and going from there. Capiche? I would suggest that everyone, whether you think you have it or not, try this one because it has a fraction. Okay? It does not necessarily mean that there's a fraction in your XY chart, but it means that most of your Y values when you plug in are going to be decimals because of that 3/4 there. Okay? So I would suggest everyone try number 4 and then move on to the homework. And then if you want more practice, try number 3, and I'll put my answers up in just a minute for those ones. Okay? Let me just show you this. Because this A value is negative, you want to factor out a negative. So if I take out a negative 3, that leaves me with x squared, and then what? Negative 3 times what gives me positive 6? Negative 2x. And then negative 3 times what gives me positive 9? Negative 3. It's a little trickier to take out, but you can't factor if your A value is negative. So if you don't take out a negative 3, you're going to screw up your factoring. Okay? So if I factor this further, negative 3, let's see, let's do my stuff there. I have negative 3 and negative 2. Two numbers would be 3 and 1 with a negative 3. So I have x minus 3 and x plus 1. That's what the factoring looks like. Is there going to be an intercept right here? No, why not? There's no x. No x, no answer. So here I get an answer of x equals 3. Here I get an answer of x equals negative 1. So what are my zeros? 3, 0, and negative 1, 0. Okay? All right, you should be able to go from there. So here's my answer for number 3, if you'd like to check your work. So there's my work for number 4. Again, if you have a 3/4, it is totally reasonable to get anything with a 4th in it, which would be a 0.25, a 0.5, 0.75. If you get something other than that, chances are you plugged something in wrong. Okay? If you have a 1/2 in your problem, it's reasonable to get a 0.5 or a whole number. Not really reasonable to get anything else. Okay? Happy studying.